Good afternoon, everyone. I say good evening. We're back with Real Talk with Dr. White and my co-host, Dr. Tajimati Williams, or Dr. Williams. And tonight, we want to just thank everyone for the viewing that you've been doing over the last couple of months with our episodes. You have made them enriched, I should say, enriching to us, but enriched to others. And I'm just looking forward for tonight. Tonight is actually a continuation of an episode we did a couple of weeks ago on this topic of spiritual trauma. And Dr. Williams, would you take it away for us tonight? Set the stage, give us some recap as we dive into this wonderful topic that we've been challenged with by the Lord to give.
Yes, thank you, Dr. White. All right, so we have been talking about spiritual trauma. Actually, we had been talking prior to spiritual trauma. We talked a lot about forgiveness and what that even looks like, what that means, the difference between forgiveness and reconciliation. And then we talked a lot about the work of restoring the individual, which that work can be done only by God. And then we started the conversation of spiritual trauma and the role the church plays, in causing this kind of wound.
Right.
And then the last discussion we talked about how to manage or the solutions to managing spiritual trauma, which we didn't really get into the nitty gritty of that discussion. So we wanted to wrap that up today and really give people a better grasp on how to actually manage and find solutions to spiritual trauma if that's what they're dealing with. So I do think it's important that we should, because it's been about a month now. So I think it's important that we kind of just go back and talk a little bit about what trauma is and just quickly define that. As a recap, trauma is just nothing more than a physical, emotional, or psychological response to an event that is distressing. And so when we talk about spiritual trauma is really just a wound that has been inflicted by the church, and that wound can be inflicted intentionally or unintentionally. It's nonetheless a wound.
And just want to say when we say the church, not the church as a institution per se, but it could be members within the church,
Yes.
and it could be leaders within the church.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for that clarification. And I love what we did the last time. And this is a concept that comes directly from you, Dr. White. And that's the concept of stewardship and how spiritual trauma is linked to poor stewardship. In fact, one of the things that you've said, and I'm going to repeat it here, and I love it, is that spiritual trauma starts where stewardship ends. So the church's inability to properly steward individuals has led to this dilemma, this issue of wounds being inflicted on members of their church, and even leaders are also being wounded by other leaders and other people within the church, causing this concept of spiritual trauma. And then we talked about the impact that spiritual trauma can have on individuals, can cause people to be emotionally unavailable. They can withdraw. It causes isolation, which leads to it causes people to retreat, rather, which then leads to isolation. And then I think the most damaging would be blaming, not just blaming of self, but blaming God. So we want to spend the next, 25, 30 minutes of our discussion today in talking to two groups of people, right? How do we manage and solve this issue of spiritual trauma? And I think we need to speak to the layperson, right? The individuals in the church that have been afflicted and have this faith wound. And then we also need to speak to leadership, right?
Leadership. Yep. Thanks a lot, Doc. I really appreciate that intro. And again, we're here today just to expound on something that the foundation we've laid before. And I want to talk about a little bit before we dive in the concept of exposure. Exposure is not the end of a story. Exposing the wound is not the end. It's actually the beginning. It creates this environment and atmosphere that we need to unpack. And so, yet exposure alone cannot heal what stewardship has wounded.
Yes.
And so what I mean by that, stewardship is actually taking care of or maintaining. And so when there's a lack of that within the church setting, exposure presents itself, and we cannot then go back and say, okay, how are we going to heal this process. It goes now beyond this stewardship concept because you have violated stewardship, and it's in trust. It talks about how do we trust? How does leaders trust again? How does member trust again? How does we trust the institution, which
Mhm.
times may feel a little bit fragile at that particular moment? How
Mhm.
do we get back to this point? And the key point here, Dr. Williams, is that we cannot seek the church or individual to restore us.
No,
They are not capable of doing that. It is actually in God.
it's
The
the work of the Holy
capacity
Spirit.
of restoration is the work of the Holy
Absolutely.
Spirit.
Absolutely.
So what now? What now? Where do we turn to? We turn to God.
Yeah.
Saying to God, how can we be restored? The psalmist said, the Lord is is not close to brokenhearted,
Mm.
to save the crushed spirit. And so this afternoon, we know that God does not distance himself from the wounded faith. He does not do that. He actually moves towards it. As you're hurt, God moves towards you. And I'm saddened to know sometimes folks don't understand that, and they think that God has abandoned them. And
Yeah.
I'm not a physician. The concept of suicide or anything, but I think sometimes folks may feel that they have no one else to turn to in this hurt situation. And so I'll begin tonight by talking a little bit about restoration. Again, this restoration is actually in God and
Mm-hmm.
not in the institution or the church. It is the source of salvation. So salvation is not again looking to someone to give it to you or give it to us.
Mm-hmm.
Salvation is found in the church. So when stewardship fail within the church, the foundation of faith does not collapse. We need to understand that. Not
Mm.
because stewardship failed in church, God church has not collapsed. It remained the secured place for Christ to be in, to heal us in, and to move us forward.
Can I
And
just,
go ahead,
sorry, do
please.
you mind if I just do a little plug in there? I think that
Please
is
do.
such an important concept because oftentimes when we are wounded or hurt, we tend to want to leave um, the community, right?
Right.
We tend to leave church, and we'll talk a little bit as we kind of walk through the solutions of how to manage spiritual trauma. We'll talk a little bit about how sometimes retreating might be the best thing to do, but we have to remember that God is still he's still seeking and still he
Yes.
still wants us to come draw close to him. He wants us to
Yes.
stay close to him. And I'm reminded by actually this is part of the discussion that we had you and I privately, but one of the things that you said, I think it's in scripture, if we are faithless, God remains faithful, for he cannot
Yes.
disown himself. And that
Yes.
is to speak to this concept of people feeling like God has failed them when they have this wound, right? Because we
Right.
tend to, the church and God is synonymous, right? It should be synonymous. But we
Right.
have to remember that the people in the church that represent God don't always properly represent God. But that does
Amen.
not mean that God himself has failed us. So I
Very
just
good.
wanted to kind of
I'm glad you brought that in, God.
Mhm.
That's an excellent, excellent point. Because restoration does not require pretending that a harm didn't occur. The harm occurred.
Yes.
The church harmed you. And you said earlier, as we discussed, the church is individuals or leaders. It has harmed you.
Yeah.
And looking to the church to heal you in that point sometimes it's not the best thing to do, because guess what? Sometimes they wound you even more.
In the process of trying to heal you.
Right. Trying to heal
Okay.
you. They heal you more. And so we
Mhm.
need to turn our attention to what we think, how we can get. And it's trust. We got to really rebuild trust in God. Restoration is central to God's character. The whole concept of salvation and sinning in the garden and so forth is to restore mankind back to God.
Yes.
And yeah, we have a little bit along the path of our life, but that is God's ultimate goal, to restore us. I want to capture Augustine, one of our great early writers of theology. He says, God judged. Sorry, let's do it. God judged is better to bring good out of evil than to suffer no evil to exist. Say it
To bring
again.
good, okay, I see. Yeah, I got
Yeah,
that. To bring
yeah,
good out of evil than
right.
to.
And I might quote Joseph. He said, "You meant it for bad, but God meant it
God meant it
for
for
good." So
good.
God does not waste wounds; He
Mm, mm,
transforms them.
mm, 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 mm.
So if you're hurting, if you have been hurt, remember, God does not waste that moment. He's going to use that to restore you. And that's why it's so important to look to God for this sense of restoration, because He's the one that actually does it. So now let's talk about the two levels, right? Tonight we mentioned the layperson. Restoration has two separate levels. Wounded individual believe that they can reclaim it themselves. We cannot. All right. And sometimes what happens, they avoid the situation. They try to avoid the trauma. They try to find certain cure for this trauma. And sometimes actually someone just want to find a safe space, and there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with retreating and find a safe space. So what I've seen happen in the church, someone is wounded on a particular day, or it could be Wednesday or Sabbath or whatever, and they see the need to return to church the following Saturday or Sabbath or Sunday because they see this commitment. And they're still hurting. Maybe they need to take off that Sabbath.
Okay, so you're pointing to something, because you're dealing with solution number one for the layperson who's been afflicted. Right. And that is that you need to be able to identify if the space that you're occupying is safe enough. Yes. And you're speaking to the idea that it may not be safe enough to go back to that space, at least for the time being.
Yes.
So that is one of the ways that, even though we know that restoration is the work of the Holy Spirit, there are steps that we can take, right, along the way. And one of the steps that we can take is what you're speaking to, and that is sometimes we need to find a safe space. And that safe space may mean that where you are right now isn't that.
Isn't safe.
Yeah. And I actually love what you said. I think you said this the last time we spoke about this, was that when the space is not safe, withdrawal is a rational response.
Yes.
It could be rational enough. It could be a rational response for you to retreat.
Yes. And there's no sin in that. There's no sin in that. Don't let anybody try to guilt trip you into it. Like call it, well, where were you last Sabbath, or where were you last Sunday? You didn't attend the choir practice. Well, the choir leader offended me, and I tried to reach out to them in the week, and it got worse. And you want me to come back to church and sing along with the group with the wound? Ain't work.
And act like everything is okay when it's not. Yeah.
Sorry for the bad English, but ain't work.
Yeah.
Okay. So, because be honest with you, it's not going to help you. It just gets deeper and deeper and deeper, and some people explode. Yeah. And so that moment is necessary for healing. So I want to introduce tonight that sometimes it's good to go away into a safe place.
Yes.
The other point is that you may try to come back after a couple of Sundays or Sabbaths or whatever, and it's not getting better. And you may have appealed to leadership and it's not getting better. Guess what? I'm quite sure many churches out there have different locations. You don't really have to go back to that particular location. Right? You can find another church.
Yeah.
And if I may say, you're not that important that church is not going to exist without you.
Yeah.
That's another trauma that we do to ourselves. We believe we're so important, that particular location of that we must be there and fix things and correct things. But that might not be the point. Maybe God is actually trying to pull you out to grow you. Space.
I'm reminded of, correct me here, Dr. White, Pastor White, because you are a pastor as well. In the New Testament, and I remember reading this in one of our devotionals, where it talked about, I think wasn't it like Peter, was it Paul and Silas? And like Peter, like they had to like the young with
Timothy, the young boy that they basically Paul wanted to go among the Gentiles,
right?
Didn't want to go, and there was this confrontation, and so what Paul said, hey dude, I'm going one direction,
you go in a different direction.
And also the commentation was about a young man that was actually nervous of reaching out. We believe that it was the name is coming to me. I can't remember the name right now. I'll get it to you later on. I don't want to quote the wrong name, but it was necessary to separate.
Yeah. And the
And there was
point I'm trying to make there was that
yes,
we
yes,
see those examples all throughout the Bible, that
right,
sometimes for the sake of the work that needs to be done, um,
right,
for the sake of your well-being as well, because we talked about
right,
all of this is to be healthy and whole, right?
right, right,
You may have to move in a different direction. So there's
exactly,
absolutely nothing wrong with making that move if you need to
right,
move to a different church or whatever the case might be.
right. Because again, it's a matter of trying to get you to the point where uh, you begin to heal.
Yes.
That
Yes.
is the key here. Trying to
Yes.
get to that point that you need, and sometimes God needs to speak to us on an individual for that particular healing. And so I want to approach another item
Mhm.
where for the individual, it's also necessary, if we can, as we go through this restoration factor point of our life, do an introspection, do an inventory of oneself.
Mhm.
Asking the question, uh, what did I do in the moment of that situation that may have contributed to it? Maybe
Mhm.
nothing.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so the other approach, I'm saying, it's time for introspection of oneself, taking an inventory,
Yeah. Yeah.
uh,
Examine yourself. The Bible talks about
examining.
examine yourself. And also not so much, not only what could I have done to contribute to this, but also
Right.
what can I learn from this so that I don't repeat. It doesn't,
Yes.
it could
Yes.
be a cycle for some of us, right? You
Mm-hmm.
find maybe there is a deeper issue that you have not worked through and you find yourself in the same situation
Mm-hmm.
all the time. So is there something is there a deeper issue that I need to work through so that I don't find myself in the same situation over and over again? So
Exactly.
examining yourself, self-reflection, introspection is
It
certainly
is key. Yeah, the name came back to me. It's John Mark. I was
John
trying to
Mark.
say
Yeah,
John
thank you,
Mark. I was
Lavana.
trying to get it, Barnabas and Paul.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so that separation was necessary. And again, the inventory of oneself. I had to do it myself. I had to.
Yeah.
I once years ago in my earlier years of ministry, I moved from one church to the next, and I had to say, okay, what could I have done differently? What, and maybe sometimes nothing really. God just really ready to move you
Yeah.
on. And
Yeah.
for me, that was it. God wanted me to move from that environment to another church, and I became effective again.
Yeah. Yeah.
And my kids' environment was good, a bit better for my kids because the other church was very crowded, over 500-600 members.
Mm-hmm.
The church was only 100 and something members, and God saw the need that I needed that nurturing and so forth. So again, we cannot blame everything on the situation, but we must step back and realize what God really wants of us within these hurt and so
Yeah.
um, if I may jump a little bit to leadership.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, before we jump to that, do you mind
Go
if
ahead.
we just maybe one other thing that we should
Go
keep in
ahead.
mind for the
Go ahead.
layperson as they're
Go
trying
ahead.
to learn how to manage spiritual trauma? Also, I think it's important that we should also think about the concept of prevention.
Oh,
Sometimes
wow. You
you've heard that.
surprised me with that one, dog. I love that. I love
Well.
that.
You've heard that
I
adage,
love it.
right?
Yeah.
An ounce of prevention is
Prevention
better
is better than
than
cure.
a pound of cure.
Awesome.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So sometimes we see issues coming.
Mm.
And we don't deal with it before it becomes a bigger issue.
Good
So I
point.
think also the idea and the concept of preventing things and naming, we didn't talk,
Right.
naming the issue, naming the hurt, and really like capturing it at its inception so that it doesn't
Right.
spiral into this big to do, can be another way to effectively manage spiritual trauma before it gets out of hand. So
Mm-hmm.
prevention is something that we should also remember as we're talking about this
Yeah.
idea of managing.
I like what you just said. Because sometimes we know it's going to be dangerous, but we think
Yeah.
we are so strong enough we can go through this thing and manage this thing. And unfortunately, um, we may need to just step aside and step
Yeah.
back from it,
Yeah.
not to get hurt. And folks love to say, "Well, you tell you say I told you so." Well, try to avoid the concept of "I told you so" by not getting involved with it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So I like that approach, Doc. That is very, very important. So avoidance, key, retreat, key, taking an inventory of yourself, seeing why this may have happened, But the point for the individual, do not continue to itch at the hurt.
Hmm. Mhm.
I think many of us do that. Think God wants me to hurt, so uh, I'm going to go on a 5-second rampage here. I don't know why certain Christians believe it's okay to be abused, and that's
Hmm.
or that's Christian or Christ-like. Well, if
Yeah.
I don't be abused and take the stripes like Jesus Christ, I'm not as good as him. Come on, Christ took the stripe for us so that we don't have to take the stripes. Okay, so there you go. You
And there's
go.
already so much that we're going to have to contend within the world. We don't need to add to that in the church.
No,
This
no,
concept of we have to be beaten down,
right. To be
and we
holy.
wear that as a badge of honor, as
Yeah.
if we're diligent, true,
Mhm.
serving the Lord,
Suffering for Christ.
suffering for Christ. We're going to suffer, okay? Just being obedient to Scripture is
Suffer-
going to put you at odds with the world. You're going to suffer.
Exactly.
Don't
Yeah.
add to your suffering.
Yeah. No. Don't call on the trauma.
Don't call it on yourself. Don't come, but don't call it on yourself.
Yeah.
So we have
And
to
that
remember
amazes
again.
me. Yeah, that
Right?
amazes me. Some folks that just they just have to fight everything.
Yeah, and I think it's just because of it's I don't think it's done intentionally. I think it's just maybe the upbringing, what isn't being said in the pulpit, or just how you're raised, can have you believing that this is just the path of Christianity, of your Christian walk. But I don't believe that is in alignment with Scripture. The church is supposed to be a safe space. It's supposed to be a safe haven for believers.
And with that, if I may, I'll jump now to leaders.
Yes.
Because it's, I said to someone recently that when you're a leader of the church, you're held to a higher standard.
Absolutely.
Meaning, and this is just my own little philosophy here. Members will have disagreements and so forth, and they may even say harsh words to one another. But the leader, and I'm speaking specifically to pastors, they should never find themselves in the position they're confronting or be confrontational with members. And the way I said to the person, I said, listen, remember you are the shepherd. And start eating your sheep. Okay? You are the gatekeeper. The wolf comes, you need to protect your sheep. Even the sheep is bad. Maybe sometime, to keep it in the gate, you have to break a leg or two, be honest, and so forth. But never you eat your sheep. And never you allow them to stray. So we as leaders and ministers have to take, yes, a little more than others. This is the flip side, however. We are also not to disseminate hurt to the sheep. And too often I've seen where leaders, they themselves forget the purpose that the church is to seek and save the lost. We as leaders, that is our role. So the member can curse us, they can call us bad names, they can do everything under the sun. Your job is not to retaliate. And as I'm talking, I recall a friend of mine went to the seminary together, and a situation he had back in California. And the member actually slapped him in his face. Yeah, the member slapped the pastor in his face. And of course, he went to the conference and they were talking, and the I guess the president or minister, I don't remember who was listening. And then he asked him, did you hit her back? And he said, no. And the leaders, the president, again, said, I'm glad you did not, because if you did, I would have to terminate you.
Yes.
Yes.
Because you're held to a higher standard, even though it's, and the same concept, like this is not a foreign concept though, Dr. White, Pastor White, it's not a foreign concept, because even in the medical space, right, there's this idea of hierarchy, or this, not hierarchy, what's the word I'm looking for, where you are held to a higher standard, a higher level. So like as a physician, I can't tell you how many times I've had patients that have been belligerent. Okay. I've had wonderful patients, but I've also had some patients that have been just, they are upset. And a lot of times they're upset they come in upset and you get the brunt of it, right? Like you
Right.
didn't do anything. They might have been upset at the front desk, or the medical assistant, somebody upset them, and they
Mhm.
come in and it's like you're getting all the heat.
Right.
You have to maintain a
Pain,
level
your
of calm
yes,
because you
yes,
are held to a higher standard. If that patient hit me and I hit that patient back, guess what?
you're done.
I'm done.
You're
I'm done.
done.
Now, it is not okay for the patient to hit me, so I should seek help, right? So we're not
Right.
saying that, people in leadership positions should just take
Abuse.
abuse,
No,
right?
no.
There is, you hold other people accountable for their actions, but
Right.
you are held to a higher level. So you have to be emotionally
Yeah.
like mature to
Yeah.
deal with the situation. And that's the price you pay for being a leader.
That's the price you pay.
That is the
And it comes down to taking responsibility. The other problem I see with leaders uh, that either minimizes or avoid this restoration is
yes,
where they don't take responsibility.
yeah.
I have a friend of mine, he's my mentor. I always talk about him. He once said to me that even if you're right, take the wrong
Mm,
if you're a leader.
mm,
Leaders need to know how to apologize.
mm, yeah.
Some of them always want to be right. And they don't see the need to apologize to membership, anyone. And for the sake of salvation, just take the L in the real world. Say, take the L for the sake of salvation.
But
Apologize even if you're right.
mhm.
Take the responsibility and move on, because at the end of the day, that's a soul that God has asked you to nurture. Go ahead, Doc. I see what.
No, I was just gonna say that is actually that is what true leadership is, when you can become a servant, when you know how to bring yourself down.
Mhm.
My husband always says this to me, that when you are a leader of your home, you take everything that comes with
Oh
that
yes.
position.
Oh
Like
yes.
everything. Like if your
Everything.
wife is cutting up, it falls on you. If your child's cutting up, it falls on you.
That's it.
And let
Perfect.
me tell
Perfect.
you, it takes a mature,
Yeah.
connected individual to be
Yes.
able to take on that position of leadership in
Right.
their home. And I,
Yep.
I thank God that I have a wonderful husband that is able to do just that. But we
Mhm.
need we need leaders in the church to be able to do the same
Yes.
thing.
Yes.
Um,
Take on that is so awesome what you just said, because some just like, hey, I don't have anything to do with
yeah,
it. You
she
know.
did it, he did it, so
Yeah,
that's not
that,
that's not
that,
me.
that, yeah.
No.
And I hate to meddle a little bit, but I'm going to. Leaders that don't lead.
Yeah.
We are
Passive.
placed, yeah, passive leaders. We're placed
Yeah.
in position to lead, and we make other members lead the church.
Yeah.
That is crazy. And you wonder why folks get armed and hurt and so forth, because you're not leading.
Mhm.
You sometimes leave it up to a renegade person who was not called by God to lead. And so you're derelict in your duty. I want to kind of flip into another era that restoration can look like it's in the process within the church context, is that
Yeah.
leaders that has a lot of pride and ego. Um, when you become a leader in a church, you got to put those two little things in a box. As a matter of fact, not a wooden box, not a paper box, but a concrete box, tied up with a nice little bow, and drop it at the bottom of the ocean.
Oh,
And
yeah,
do not
yeah.
be a scuba diver. Okay. Because pride, it really goes before
Those
destruction.
before
And
the fall.
this is the problem. The Lord is holding you to a higher standard.
Yeah.
So we don't want to get the Lord's anger and wrath on us. So pride and ego is important. And I said the last one, being judgmental. Uh, One of the things that we learned at an extensive level in the seminary was suspend judgment.
Hmm. Hmm.
I'll give you the Richard White approach to that. And I have to give credit to God because he gave me this years ago. He said, do not be found on the side of the crowd that says crucify him. He said, even if You believe or think that person is wrong or guilty. Never be found on the side of the crowd that says crucify him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Be found on the side that says mercy,
Mm-hmm.
peace,
Mm-hmm.
compassion,
Mm-hmm.
faithfulness,
Mm-hmm.
and all the other loving concept of this fruit of the spirit. But do
Mm-hmm.
not be found on the side that says crucify. And we as leaders need to get there quickly. And I'm going to extend that to individuals. Because if we want to restore someone, we don't need to publicly lash them in front of everybody else. That's not restoration. Restoration cannot begin there. That's why I believe, again, it's God. However,
Yeah.
we as a church, within the concept of the institution, plays a role in this.
Yeah.
That person can feel safe to come back. And if I may just say one more thing on this, the other thing is speediness of restoration. Some people think that restoration should be instant or account to the other person's opinion. No, restoration unfolds over time. When trust is broken, it cannot be restored just by a promise. Oh, I promise to do better.
Mm-hmm.
No, I got to see you doing better. And if the red curtain, I'm just being ridiculous here. If the red curtain was the thing that offended me, and you know it offended me, but you choose, oh, red is not important, and you decide to leave the red curtain. I know I'm being very trivial here, but
Mm-hmm.
I think you understand where I'm going with it. Don't promise I'm going to remove the red curtain, and then it comes in the next Sabbath or next Sunday, the curtain's there, and then you have argument over the curtain. You know, we must act. Restoration needs to see action.
Yeah.
Words alone does not cut it, because it is rebuilding through constant stewardship. Stewardship is motion. Stewardship is maintaining and managing. Stewardship is an active word. I'm so sad that we use the word stewardship because it loses the verb.
It loses the meaning. People don't. Yeah, we need to use the word managing or manager.
Yeah,
I
because it
prefer that
really
word.
loses the word.
Yeah,
And I coined a word called stewarding.
Stewarding. Okay. Yes.
It's a
Because it's a
constant-
verb.
Yes.
It's an ongoing.
yes,
A verb is an
it's
action.
ongoing.
Yes.
Exactly. So yeah. So steward, and of course we can use the context as a noun for a person. That's why I kind of add the in to it to make it a steward in.
Stewarding. Yes.
Working, it's a
Yes.
constant work. So let's not cheapen ourselves to think that this process is just an overnight thing. It takes patience. It requires God restoring carefully in that person. It requires not rushing to heal. It requires nurturing. It requires patience, both the individual and the institution, because maybe the institution cannot remove the red curtain overnight.
True.
So you as an individual have to give patience. Not everything you see you want to change is going to be overnight, instantly.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a process. So we both learn that process and come together with this restoration. Healing is not measured by speed. It is measured by faithfulness.
I love that.
So we slow things down and we work with how the person can work, how God allows that person to grow out of that hurt over time.
And it's going to look different for different people.
Come on.
Yeah, because we're all on a journey, and God is working with us individually. So it's going to look different. Then it's going to look for me than it is for you. Yeah.
And so this restoration is critical. God is central to this. He's the only one that can restore, and scripture can give us the concept of the Garden of Eden. When man sinned, God promised to restore us to that, and he's working on that. But unfortunately, as we live, there are I call them little situations of life that we get hurt by the church, we get hurt by individual, we get hurt by many different ways, and we tend to want to blame God, to say, hey, you're the one that got me hurt. No, is the person hurt you, not God. Let's be honest with you. Leave God out of the picture for a while. It's that person. And how do I, first we talk about reconciling, that you don't necessarily have to reconcile the person. That's a couple years before. But now we're saying, how do I find room to be restored. And that
Yeah.
room is within God. So your knees are going to be necessary here.
Yeah. 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 I was going to say something about when talking to church leadership, the importance of responding with restoration and not judgment. I want people to understand that accountability doesn't mean that it's not the same thing as judging someone,
Right.
right? Like you
Right.
can hold someone
Good point.
accountable and
Good
still
point.
desire for them to be restored. And I think sometimes what happens is um, a lot of times what I see with leadership is that maybe they don't want to bring that
Sorry.
person to account because in their minds they believe that holding that person accountable is judging that
Judging.
person,
Yeah.
and it's not, right. You can hold someone accountable and still wish them well and still want to
Yes.
restore them. It's how you do it
Right.
that will communicate to the individual whether or not you really do prioritize that process of restoring them. But holding someone accountable is an important step in being a good leader. And holding someone accountable is also a part of healing your
Yes.
own.
Yes. Yeah. And you do both person justice. You
Yeah.
do the armed and the harmer by
Yes.
holding them accountable. And another thing, as you mentioned, do not make it a confrontational situation. I've
Yeah.
seen where folks bring in the hurt and the hurted, the hurter, I'm coining words here, or the adversary and the villain, whatever you want to put it, but both parties, and they're like, so what did you say to her? And what did you say to her? And what did you say? What did it? And they try to trash it out there. Well, let's step back for a while. If you were the offended individual,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the conversation just become a battering of back and forth, your real feeling is being ignored.
Mm-hmm.
Because it now becomes, let's resolve this together, other than let me hear you out. So the leader needs to hear individuals' argument sides. And then if over time it's necessary, then you can bring both of them together, but on an agreeable pattern. And of course, Matthew has a perfect way, the book of Gospel of Matthew, I've heard, if someone offend you, go to that person, you work it out. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Please do not bring the leaders in a situation that you yourself need to work out.
Yes. And this does not apply to things like, domestic violence or abuse, like that.
No. This is, let me put my disclaimer out there.
Yes.
If it's a child molestation, so you go to the authorities.
Yes.
If it's abuse of family, or so you go to the proper authorities.
Yes.
For that. If you have certain I want to say psychological part, you go to a professional. Yes. This is that red curtain situation I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. You don't like red curtain, the person, you're like, I'll be honest with you, I'll give you a good scenario, perfect one, real one, I should say, not perfect. Mm-hmm. The lady doesn't have a hat to wear for communion. And someone approached the head deacon and said, hey, Jane doesn't have a hat for communion, so she cannot participate. Okay. Head deacon said, really? Goes over and see Jane. Really? Jane doesn't have a hat. And so now she goes up to Jane. I know I scheduled you for this communion, but Julie said you don't have a hat for the communion, so you're going to have to sit this one out. That's what I'm talking about. No. First of all, I'll break it down for you. Does Jane have a hat?
First and foremost.
Was it clear to Jane that if you do not come with a hat, you will not participate?
Yeah, second and foremost.
Next, and I'm taking another level, level 2. What does a hat have to do with communion?
Third and foremost.
Okay. And Miss Leader or Mr. Leader, if someone brought that tale to you at that particular moment, your job as a leader is say, well, at this point, it's too late. She's at the communion service. We'll deal with that at another time, or we'll bring that up. Why not take that approach?
Yeah, we tend to major in minors, and there is no scriptural or spiritual basis for a lot of the things that we do. It's
Right.
just share tradition, culture, and
Got
it's
it.
nothing wrong with tradition and culture. But if it's going to harm someone in
Yeah.
the process, and there is no scriptural or spiritual basis for it, then we need to reconsider. And
Yeah.
also, if you really feel that strongly that Jane, no, because honestly, I'm not even going to take away from this. You feel very strongly that
Right.
Jane should not serve.
Without a hat.
She doesn't have a hat. Okay. Well, how did you approach Jane?
Exactly.
Right? Like, Jane, I am so sorry. This is last minute. I apologize. I'm not even sure if I even communicated this to you properly. I don't think you have a hat. I wish I had an extra hat for you. But is it possible that you can just sit this one out, and maybe the next time you can, there's a way that you can approach individuals where you still make them feel
comfortable.
like, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
We lack that sort of.
And I'm going to, maybe this one of the rarest time I'm going to challenge you on this program. I hear you. But I'm
But
like,
Jane should serve.
What does that have to do?
No, I'm with you. I think Jane should serve. But you have people, you have different,
Yeah,
89-year-olds. It's like Jane must have a hat on.
Yeah, it's a exactly. That baby's
I got
a
you.
9-year-old.
I got you. But fine.
Yeah.
That's the position you're taking. You're not getting off that. Good. But how did you bring Jane into that? You see what I'm saying? Into that conversation, so that she's not hurt by this.
I agree. And you're right, because sometimes you really have to address certain issues and take a stand on it. But how do you approach that issue and make that person feel after you have approached that issue?
Absolutely.
And point well taken. And so as we're going to close on this whole accountability.
Mm-hmm.
Accountability is on both sides. Restoration, for it to happen, we agree that is only God, in God you'll find it in God.
Right.
And while doing that, if you believe that you have wronged the person, as a Christian, we need to own up to it. And I was heavy on the leaders, but also members. Hey, go to the person and say, hey, I'm sorry. There's nothing wrong with saying I'm sorry. I apologize. I really want to begin the process of restoration. And I know we can only seek it in God, and together we'll try to seek this restoration, whatever difference we have between both of us. So that accountability, and that will actually strengthen the system. When the leaders behave and act like that, other people will follow through and strengthen the system, and the church will be a better place. Last point I want to make here, and I'll give you the last word after this, Doc, is that being wounded by a leader or a member doesn't mean that God wounded you. God has not wounded you. And God is there with you. Take you through the hurt. And sometimes this hurt, as we said earlier, this hurt is actually to build you even stronger. I myself is a living testimony of that. I've been through a lot of hurt with this church, but I've been part of a lot. And at times I would want to walk away. But I tell you, if I did, I would not be this strong. I hang in there. I stuck it out, and I love my church. I love my church brothers and sisters. I've forgiven a lot of the harms and hurt from being in this almost 30-something years. But at the end of the day, we must understand that we need to be restored in God. Not the last word, as I said earlier.
No, I think you hit it on the head. You said exactly what I wanted to say, and that is to give people hope. That God has never left you in this process of being wounded, and getting the help you need. If you need it, get the help you need. But remember that the goal is to be restored. So in this process, in this journey, don't turn away from God. You can turn away from the people that hurt you. That is perfectly okay to do, because you need to be in a safe space. You can hold people accountable, because that's important to do. Whatever it is that you need to do, but don't turn away from God. Don't turn away from God.
Thank you, Doc. And with that, we're going to wrap up. We promise to keep these podcasts under 45 minutes around that time, and we're hitting that time bell here. I want to thank my co-host, Dr. Williams, for tonight's episode. And I must say, again, these episodes, I learn a lot through them, and I hope that you do. I'm asking for you to chime in on our website. We are on YouTube, and we're also on Facebook. Please, your comments and your input is vital to the growth of this ministry. It is a ministry, and we're just here to talk about the hard topics that affect us in church that sometimes seem to be a little taboo to speak on. We want to be the voice of those individuals. So thank you again. Looking forward for another episode in the next couple of weeks. And last but not least, if you have any suggestion on topics that you would like to hear, please be free to text us, put it in the chat, put it on Facebook, YouTube. We'll be happy. So bye for now. We'll talk with Dr. White.
One other thing, Dr. White, I wanted to give a shout out to Nishan, I believe. She's been commenting on our discussion today, and I just love a lot of what she's been saying, kind of just echoing what we've been talking about. Abuse is not okay. Restoration takes time. And when the space is not safe, withdrawal might be a natural response, and just to trust God. So thank you for engaging in our conversation, and we hope to get more engagement in the future.
Thank you. Great. Yes. Have a good night, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now.